Good afternoon. This is Bob Gorley. I am recording Mr. Bubb on June the 9th, 2025. And we'll start with that. Mr. Bubb, how do you like to be called?
Coach,
All right.
Bubber, Bob, anything but, well, Robert's all right. So I answer almost anything.
Where were you born and raised at?
Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, 1936.
And which high school did you go to?
Lock Haven High School.
How did the high school treat you?
Oh, much as I can remember, and that's back a few years, there were good days, enjoyed them.
Who was, back in the high school days, who was your best instructor?
Oh, well, mostly then, the camps weren't really popular. Sometimes you had a visiting coach come in to practice or something, but mainly it was the two high school coaches, Eddie Sayers and Bud Stamen, and both of them were teachers at the high school. And of course that was the rule back then. You had to be pretty much a teacher from at the high school or other high schools to be the wrestling coach.
When you graduated high school, then which college did you go to?
I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship at the University of Pittsburgh.
Oh. So you went down to Pittsburgh,
Yep.
and what did you major in?
I was in health and physical education.
And did you wrestle there?
Yes, I wrestled there for, well, back then, probably some people not aware of this, that you couldn't wrestle on the varsity team. There were freshman teams. There was a rule that to allow freshmen to acclimate themselves to college and the toils of going through college education and the studies and so forth. I think it was a good rule. I think sort of sad when it was to allow freshmen to wrestle in the early 70s somewhere. But no, I didn't wrestle on the varsity, obviously. We had a freshman team. I wrestled on the freshman team. And then 3 more years with on the varsity, redshirted 1 year, and graduated in 1959.
When did you graduate in '59? Then from there, did you go on into the coaching world, or what did you do after you graduated?
Yeah, my first job was at Tyrone High School, just outside of Altoona State College, and that was my first teaching and coaching job. Was there 7 years before arriving here at taking the job at Clarion, and during the time there, and then I went over, of course, in education. You had to have so many additional credits, so Penn State was right across the way, and so I went over there and picked my master's degree.
Who recruited you to Clarion?
Well, that's a long story, but mainly the person was Frank Lignelli.
Okay.
And of course you know the history of Frank, and Waldo S. Tippin, who was the AD at the time. Frank was a teacher, but in that year the transition with the ADs, what's his name? Oh, you get old, you don't remember as well. But Mr. Tippin retired in '66, the year that I came here, and Frank Lignelli was to become the head AD. He was the wrestling coach.
So they hired you, and your first years of coaching. When did you start getting? Were you good right off the bat?
We weren't bad. Another thing that when we were hired, the college, all the state colleges were the same way. You taught and coached. Now they're all full-time coaches and so on, but we had to teach. We received one less class to teach for our coaching duties, but otherwise we were teaching health and first aid, and, the gamut of sports that they offered then as a credit for students. But our schedule was 2 matches with Teal, 2 matches with Grove City, 2 matches, always home and away. Slippery Rock, Edinburgh. It was not a high-powered schedule. And only through the years that we were able to increase our schedule as far as difficulty. And a lot of schools were not anxious to wrestle us in the theory that Clary being a state school and a small school, the bigger schools didn't, in case they would happen to lose, it wouldn't look good. And example of that was Ed Peary at Naval Academy. He was the coach, and Ed and I were teammates at Pitt. And I had the rare experience of being coached by or wrestling with a family that had both sons and the father were 3-time national champions. And that was Ed and Hugh. And Hugh was my freshman coach. Ed was my teammate. And of course, Rex Peary was my coach. And that was a great experience and so forth.
Did you say there's 3 generations of national champions there?
Yes.
That is something.
Yeah, Ed was a 3-time national champion. Hugh was a 3-time national champion and on the Olympic team. And Rex, the father, was a 3-time national champion at Oklahoma State.
And
on equal. In fact, it never happened before and it hasn't happened since, where both sons and the father were national and 3-time national champions.
So when did you start wrestling the tougher teams?
Well, it was gradually, Bob. I can't remember. I remember the toughest team we were able to get first was the University of Pittsburgh, and of course that a lot of epic moments with Pitt and Clarion, but the Shawless match with Chapman, but then later we got better known, and for goodness, and then we picked up Ohio State and Penn State off and on, and right within the PSAC. I mean, you didn't have to go too far. You take Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, Edinburgh, were always, and they're tough. And if we went through the schedules year by year by year, it was one year we win, next year they win, we win, they win. And so they were nationally ranked also. So they were there with the Penn State and the Pitts and the Ohio States and so forth. And then eventually we moved up the Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Minnesota. We wrestled them all.
Originally, you just wrestled in not the NCAAs, but that NAIA or.
Well, we tried to go. The NCAA back in when I started coaching, you could enter one or two, you entered in the national tournament. You weren't go through elimination process in order to get to the nationals. If I had somebody who was worthy and the record was worthy, you could enter them in the national tournament. Before I got there, Mr. Ligonelli, as a coach, always took the kids to the NAIA, and we went, I think we went 66, 67, and probably 68, maybe 69. I don't have that information in front of me. We went to the NAIA, which is still in existence today. But the NCAA said one way or the other, and they put their championship days on the same day as the NAIA. So that made you choose one way or another. Well, we had enough insight to realize that the future was with the NCAA, and we then took our teams in the early 70s. There was elimination process, which is difficult to understand, but they started out with the college divisions. And then so many, we were allowed 3 qualifiers into the big, which was the NCAA, then the Pitts, Penn States, Iowa State, but the small colleges. And the Division III was allowed their champions to come in. Later, which is a long story, the marriage wasn't very good, and the NCAA, in all their wisdom, divided it Division I, Division II, and Division III. And that cut out anybody other than Division I going to Division I. In other words, Division II has their own championship. Division III has their own NCAA championship. And we elected, you could take a small school, which was a Division II, and that's what Clarion is and still is, a Division II school. But in the NCAA structure, they left room that you could take one sport and move it to Division I. And we selected, the university selected wrestling, had the best chance of competing at the Division I level.
So, are you recruiting wrestlers to come to Clarion then?
Oh yeah, that's why we are what we were, because of the recruiting. And Jack Davis, my hats off to Jack at all times. There were only 2 coaches, myself and Jack Davis, for many years till we got up until the late 80s. We got a 3rd coach, but there were only 2 of us, and Jack was my recruiter. And let's face it, we wouldn't be here talking about Clarion and its success if we wouldn't have recruited. I mean, yours truly gets a lot of credit, but really the answer was your ability to recruit and bring good kids into the program. And that's what we were able to do. We were able to see, and Jack was a relentless recruiter. He was on kids that other schools' radar passed over. And we got our share of good kids too, but we have some really good kids that at least the big schools weren't after. And we were very successful with that. If you didn't recruit, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. And go ahead. Yeah.
The whole time you were coaching, did you still have to instruct, or were you still an instructor?
Oh, yeah.
The whole time you, okay.
You mean instructor as teaching?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's why I was just.
To the day I retired, I was teaching.
When did Marcia come?
as was Jack Davis. Anybody was coaching. Al Jacks, we just mentioned here a while ago, and all coaching staffs were all teachers
They had
at the
to
college.
instruct.
Yep.
When did Marcia come into the picture?
Well, she. There's a funny story on that too. She's from Lock Haven. I went to Lock Haven High School, but I really didn't. We didn't start dating till both of us graduated high school, and she went to Lock Haven University, and of course I was at Pitt. And just one summer, I was home working with Junior League Baseball, and her dad was the coach on one of the opposing teams, and so I just arranged a date through him, and it worked out. Let's put it that way. And we kept dating other people, and she was dating Ralph Clark, who was a wrestler at Lock Haven, and Ralph was a state champion from Clearfield, and ironically, we met them in a dual meet, and you knew who I drew. I drew Ralph, and Ralph was really good. He's my hat's off to him, but I was able to win by the skin of my teeth, and with that came Marcia. So
You had a little extra incentive.
yeah. And our dual meets with Lock Haven, they had Gray Simons on the team we wrestled. They were tough. Gray was, 3-time national champion, and Lock Haven was tough, and Bloomsburg was tough. And, as I say, the fourth school, Edinburgh, and they are the remaining 4 schools at Division I. All the other schools have taken their wrestling program Division II. And the PAC, and that's all the state colleges like Edinburgh. Well, I mentioned them. Shippensburg, Mansfield, East Stroudsburg, Westchester, and so on. There are 14 of them, and only 4 have Division I programs anymore.
Well, how did you? How about some of your wrestling stories? You're writing a book about them?
Well, the book is on hold right now. When I went into research, I have all the material divided by year from the beginning of wrestling at Clarion, which was 1939, 1940 was their first wrestling team. And they wrestled for 2 years, and then they broke, as most schools, because the war was on. And most of the guys were off in the military. And it started back up again, and it seems to me 46, 47, and they wrestled then until it was 49, 50, I think. They dropped it again because they couldn't find a coach. They always had a student coach, but I think just guessing what happened was liability and things was coming in to be a big thing anymore, and the school couldn't find an adult coach, so they had a student coach. And they said, well, if somebody gets hurt, we got just a student coach. Liability wasn't. That's my guess, my take on it. But it was dropped then and was dormant through the 50s. Then Frank Lignelli started it back up in 59, 60.
And when did you come to Clarion?
In 66. I replaced Lignelli.
Did you lose some, with the Vietnam War going on, did some of your recruits get shipped over to that lake? Did you lose some of your wrestlers?
To where?
To the military, to the Vietnam.
I don't know if we lost that many, but the way it was then, that if you were in college, you couldn't be drafted.
So
And it was a drafting system back in the early years before we went to a volunteer military. And we had Gary DiDomenico, who was a state champion and from Tyrone. And then he sort of dropped out of school on his own, but he went to Vietnam, and I had some Tyrone high school kids that went directly to Vietnam. I had one that was shot up pretty badly while over there, and but I see him now in Tyrone, and unfortunately Gary just passed away about 2 months ago with a heart attack. So, but no, I didn't lose many guys were drafted out of college unless their grades fell below.
So getting back to your book, do you have a name for it yet?
Now, to tell you the truth, Bob, I hope to start. Gary, Dave Caslow, who wrestled for Lignelli and was very good here in the early years, did his homework on. I asked him if he would do the beginning of wrestling up until my time, and I would take my time and work on that. He has got his pretty much together. The information he was able to find on is good enough for the book already. But as I took over and started to increase the information on 66 and 67 is maybe 50 pages long. But when we got up, we had a schedule over 20-some dual meets beside tournaments. And you try to do fairness to all those kids and the dual meets, the importance of, and so on. But we'd have a book about 9,000 pages, and we're trying to find a way to reduce some of that. We've gone maybe 1, 2, 3 volumes type thing. I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but I got in over my head. There was so much material, so much editing. It all had to be taped or typed into a different form to meet printer and things like that. There's a lot of headaches. I still have hopes of putting it together, but really, right now we're in a pause mode. But I think it would be really interesting. At least it would be interesting to me. I spend more time reading the articles than I did putting together for a book.
When was your first national champion?
That was 1972 at the Nationals. We took, I think we only took 2 kids down. That was Gary Barton and Wade Shawless. They had won, Wade had won the college division. We had to qualify through the college division. And Gary placed 3rd. He was beaten by a Cal Poly kid, something like 12-5 or something in the semifinals, and he wrestled his way back, and we went down to the University of Maryland, and there were, I can't remember, it was the 3rd kid went along. The next year we took 3-4 kids to the Nationals. But anyway, we qualified Gary and Wade, and of course Wade was seeded, and Gary had a record of, wasn't bad, wasn't outstanding. He had 5 or 6 losses, and he wasn't seeded, and miraculously Gary, he walked into one funny story, true story. Walked into he placed third, was beaten badly in the semifinals of the college division. Well, now we're with all the big guys, and we walked in the door at the University of Maryland, and we walked into the Coliseum, and the mats were 8 mats all laid out, and teams were warming up. It was the day before the tournament and so forth, and they were working out to make weight and so forth. And there was Oklahoma State, there was Penn State, there was Navy. One of the good kids was from Navy, and Oklahoma. And Gary says, you know, Coach, I could win this thing. And I don't lie very often, but crossed my fingers and said, Gary, there's no reason why you couldn't win this thing. You know, they put your jock strap on the same way you do. And then I worried a little bit about that, but needless to say, Gary went through the tournament. He beat the number 1 and number 2, number 4, and a lower seed. Of the 5 guys he wrestled, 4 of them were seeded. 1, 2, and 4. I think the other guy might have been 6 or 7. But he beat Riley from Oklahoma State in the semifinals. Riley had lost a match all year and had beaten the defending national champ at that weight, Phil Parker, which Gary would meet in the finals. So he met the number 1 and number 2 guy in the semis and finals. He beat Riley from Oklahoma State, and that was the only match out of the 5 that he was ahead from the beginning. He was always behind and came back at the end to win. Toke from Navy, he met in the quarters. Toke, we used to go down with Ed Perry was coach, and we would go down there and scrimmage them. Well, Toke beat him so bad in preseason, he couldn't finish. He cut his eye and everything else. So Eddie beat him in overtime. It was came from behind, tied it up, and put it in overtime, and won in overtime. And then he met Phil Parker in the finals, and Phil came right out and tripped him, put him on his back, and we were down 4-0 just to start the match. And I said, oh, and the place was packed, and I said, oh Lord, I prayed a little bit and said, don't let him be embarrassed there in the finals. Well, Gary comes back, threw him, took him down, escaped, took him down, threw him on his back, and that was pretty much the whole night. In fact, we're responsible for a lot of tournaments have towel people to go out. When Gary Barton's match was coming to an end, the crowd was screaming because they were taking turns, literally putting each other in their back. And the buzzer went off. Nobody heard it. They kept on wrestling, and finally the buzzer was begging, and we had there were 3 referees back then doing the finals, and all 3 of them were down looking at their backs because they were going back and forth. They wrestled approximately 18 seconds overtime. I mean, the match was over, but it kept on going. They finally had to jump over the table, the scoring table, run out in the mat and say, it's over, it's over. So they needed to go back and reconstruct. But in reconstructing, they between the 2 of them, they scored something like 9 points in 18 seconds.
Oh, in the 18 seconds there was lots of scoring, but they canceled.
Yeah, they had to go back and
that.
figure that out. And the scorer he knew it right exactly. And Gary was the first national champion of Clarion.
Not seeded, and he beat a defending national champion.
Yes, Phil Parker for the finals. But he beat Riley from Oklahoma State, who had beaten
the undefeated guy. He beat him first.
Yeah, beat him in the semis because he had beaten Parker during the dual meets during the year. So he got first seed, and Parker got second seed, and then Wade came about 15. Not to take anything away from Wade, but he pinned the first guy, second guy, third guy. There was one match in there that he didn't. He beat 8-2 or something like that. And he pinned Hubbard, Jerry Hubbard from University of Michigan in the finals. He pinned him, and a little later was voted the most outstanding wrestler.
Was Hubbard like a defending? Or
Hubbard won it the next year. I don't know what his seed was, okay, but he was a high seed.
All right, and then so that was the first year that you had national champions, and then one year you had 3 national champions.
That's the next year.
The next year, yeah.
We had Gary graduated in
Martin.
72. 73 we came through with Donnie Roan, who was a freshman, and Elbow Simpson, he might have been a junior, and Wade, and Chuck Corrier. And it's like they said, well, you know, Roan was a champion.
National champion.
And Simpson won the nationals too. He was a national champion, and Wade won again. And I'm always asked what happened to Corrier. Well, I always tell him that poor coaching was a problem there. But we had 1/4 of all the national champions in two years. If you take all the national champions in 2 years, there would be 20 of them, 10 and 10. We had 5. So we had 1/4 of all the national champions in those 2 years.
And then you had eventually you had an Olympic champion.
Yes, we had a lot of good wrestlers in between there. We had Charlie Haller was a 3-time national place winner, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and but we eventually, if you want to march on up until the 1992. Well, Kurt Angle won the NCAAs. He won them. Let's see. Trying to say. I know he won them in '92. You're going back after. And he won them the year before that. Yes, he won them twice. He was runner-up once, and he lost his freshman year. He won them his sophomore year, was runner-up his junior year, and a national champion again his senior year. And Kurt Angle was a 6 foot, 100 or 250. Well, let's say most of the time he wrestled in around 220. And for a heavyweight, they're usually 6'2", 6'3". 275. Of course, the weight class limit is 285. And he wrestled Sylvester Turkey from Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania, and in the finals of the nationals. And Sylvester was about 6'6", about 265 built, and Kurt was built, but he was short, but he had a great duck under. If anybody's ever had a chance to watch him wrestle, he could duck you right and left. He could fake you going under your right arm and then duck your left arm, and he's very, very good. And of course, he went on to win the Worlds in freestyle and win the Olympic Games in 1996.
When he did that, did you get to go along, or did it?
No.
So.
No.
Okay.
A spectator. Yeah, I was there to watch him win the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for the Worlds too. They were both in Atlanta, Georgia.
So now, when did you retire from Clarendon?
I retired from teaching in '95, and retired from coaching and at the end of 92.
What would you be suggestions for the youth? From the things you've learned, what advice you have for kids?
Oh, that's a 2-hour segment by itself. I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. I thought I was sure, but not now with the transfer portal and NIL. Everybody's going to be, especially within a couple days for this podcast back, the judge ruled that you can pay up to $20 million to your athletes per year. And
For what, 1 year?
Well, no, not a athlete, up to. You can spread that on your team. Or how they want to do it.
The university can do that.
Clarion's not going to do it. They've left it for the Olympic sports. Talk just wrestling. They have it. Iowa, Penn State, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Michigan. There's only going to be 10 maybe schools that can do that type of thing, and then there'll be another 10 that partially they can deal it out, but it has its problems. If I get $20,000 a year and you come in, they give you $5,000, and you beat me in elimination. You go, hey, I want what he makes. I can see all kind of problems with that, and I'm glad I'm not coaching. I really. To the youth, I would say, to the mothers and fathers that might look at this, there's a lot of youth wrestling going on out today. Make it fun. It's got to be fun for them. Otherwise, when they get 9th grade or 10th grade, they'll quit. Tired of it.
Burn out.
So let them, if they don't want to go a weekend tournament, don't force them to go. And then as they get older and they decide they really want to pursue this, of course everybody's going to pursue basketball and football because of the money that's going to be out there. There's a certain amount of pressure in wrestling, certainly when you walk on the mat and you're all by yourself out there, except your opponent. If you make a mistake, everybody sees it. It's we've run some youth tournaments. You've probably been involved in youth tournaments, and some kids that are out there starting to know they're going to get beat or crying with 15 seconds left to go in the match. I can't be fun. Somebody's putting pressure somewhere. Make it fun for them. In any sport that would apply to, or soccer or gymnastics or anywhere. When they're the young kids and they have them on the mats at 5 and 6, 7 years of age.
How old are you when you started wrestling?
Believe it or not, I never started wrestling until I was 9th grade.
9th grade.
9th grade. The only reason I went out for wrestling, my buddies went out. I went out for junior high football, but when they got up in football, there wasn't much room for a 119-pound defensive end. So wrestling sort of was a good draw for me, but I didn't start till I was in the 9th grade. So it was all new to me, and it was fresh, and I enjoyed it. And that's why, today I would be considered, whoa, he didn't start in the 9th grade, he's way behind. And probably to a certain extent I would be. I had to learn everything in 9th grade, but I was more willing to learn than maybe some 7-year-old.
What do you think about the kids wrestling year-round now?
Well,
when we grew up, you wrestled one sport and then you did something else.
Well, that was the same with me. Even in college, there was a season, and then you go the off season. I didn't wrestle. I've had it. You know,
Yes.
it was so intense, and practices were intense, and the matches and the pressure and the tournaments and so on. When the season was over, I didn't wrestle anymore. Well, when I went home to work, you know, most of us had to go home and work
Yeah.
and help earn a little bit of money. Although we were on scholarship, you needed a little bit. My father had passed away when I was 14, and things were pretty tough at home. And my mother took in college students, and she worked as a cook at one of the elementary schools, and it just went out and get that spending money. And but I would go up to the college, Lock Haven, and there was a couple kids going to school up there, wrestlers, that, you know, we work out. But it was something I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And I go up and say, hey, you go to work out? Yeah, we'll go to next Wednesday. All right, I go up and work out with them on Wednesday. With no coaches or anything like that. You just got together, traded holds, intelligence on wrestling, and then wrestled some.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had 3 brothers and a sister. All gone.
Where were you in that?
I was the baby of the
Oh,
family.
you're the youngster.
My next closest was my brother, and he was 10 years older than I was. Well, I take that back. I would have had a brother 3 years older than I was, but when he was 3, he got pneumonia, and from there his temperature went up, and he went into convulsions, and they didn't have penicillin in those days, and we lost him. So, but the next living brother I had was 10 years older than I was, and
Did any of them wrestle?
no. Mm-mm. They were all musical. Everybody in my family was musical.
Are you musical?
I like music, but
Do you play the piano or anything?
no.
Any instruments?
No.
Did you sing?
I was an athlete. You know, you couldn't go out for the band or play music if you're an athlete. But that was the sort of the feeling back in those days. They were the bandies, and you were an athlete.
How did you get so that you were coaching baseball for a while?
Well, my father he ran a lot of the baseball leagues, and he was really into baseball, and he coached, and I really had to play because my dad was a big thing with my father. But when I first went out for a little league, I wasn't very, very good. I was playing second, and the balls kept going between my legs, and then somebody said, "Why don't you try catching?" They needed a catcher, so I got all those tools of ignorance, as I call them, and I became a catcher. And
You must have had a pretty good arm then, because a catcher needs an arm.
well, I'm not sure I didn't throw my arm out, but yeah, it helps you have an arm. And then in the Little League, I played pretty well in the Little League. Our team went to the World Series, the Little League World Series, and
The team you were on or the team you were coaching?
no, the team I was on.
The team you were on made
The year before, they won. Lock Haven won the World Series.
Wow.
But it wasn't then. We're talking about 48 and 49. It was in the international. It is today. So pretty much were teams all from the United States.
One of the hottest sports in Pennsylvania now is girls wrestling. Have you ever seen a girls match?
Oh yeah. That's very common now, and it was better that they formed those teams rather than girls wrestling on boys teams, because that was a lot of teams would forfeit anyway, and the boys couldn't win. If you won, you beat a girl,
Yeah.
and if you lost, You meet a girl beat you, but that's one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. It's girls wrestling. The NCAA's picked it up now. There's enough colleges sponsoring women's sports and wrestling in particular that they have a national championship the same way the boys do. And of course the Olympics, it's in the Olympics. They have 5 weight classes in the Olympics for women. So it was something its time was due. And they're very good. If you've ever watched them, that's, it's really, I'm surprised. They hit the high crotches and into a double leg and so forth and throws and gee.
Punxsutawney has a girl that's been the state champion the last couple of years, I think.
Yep.
And Jonathan Brothers, who was a male state champion, he said she's tough.
Yeah.
She could maybe
Yeah.
beat him.
Yeah.
Well, what else would you like to talk about?
Well, probably one thing I'd like to say, people always ask me, what do you think throughout all your career, what was the key thing? And there are so many things that happened that you go back, but the thing that sticks out for me is the poster that you can see if you look to your right is that was what the NCAA did in honor of the 75th anniversary of wrestling under the NCAA. They took 20 of the best wrestlers in the lightweights, 20 middleweights, and 20 heavyweights or heavier weights. And they put them on their website, and you could vote for some of who you thought was, they chose 5 lightweights, 5 middleweights, and 5 heavyweights. 15 wrestlers in 75 years, and 2 of them are from Clarion, Shawless and Angle. And they're up there in the corners. You can see Kurt there in the right-hand corner, and Wade's on the left-hand corner in the first row.
Perfect.
And they were selected by wrestling fans and so forth. It wasn't, and you're up there with Cale Sanderson. He's on there. Is one of the best. And of course, almost every.
He's never lost a match in his life.
No,
So,
I don't know about the Pee Wee leagues.
well,
or
you're right.
something,
But I mean,
but-
ever since he was competitive.
But, Tom Brands is on there, the coach of Iowa, and John Smith, who was just retired from the coach of Oklahoma State. I mean, that's the class of the class, and out of 15 of them, 2 of them are Clarion wrestlers. That's the keynote of, brought a lot of notoriety to Clarion University, a lot of notoriety to Clarion proper community, and very proud of that because that was all selected by wrestling fans across the country.
Well, I've always considered you one of the elite coaches in the United States, and I really want to thank you for this interview.
Well, as I told you before, without the kids, we wouldn't have this conversation. They're up there, I'm not up there, and I won't deny that if you talk about a wagon wheel and it has so many spokes in it, there are wrestlers, the community, the crowds we used to draw. I mean, that gym was packed, and the competition came in here. Oklahoma State, and the year we knocked them off up here at the gym, they were ranked number 1 or 2 in the country, and it's just been a combination, a great period of time where things all came together, and I'm very proud to have been a part of it. And the coaches obviously play a part, but only a part. Now, as I said before, if we would add those guys, we wouldn't be having a conversation with Bob. I'm proud to be a part of it and proud to have the kids that we had and what those kids have done with their life and so on. It's truly amazing. It was a great period of time.
If there was one book or movie that you really enjoyed, what was the top book that you've ever read?
Sorry about that.
Sorry,
It should be taken care of.
I'll pause it.